All right, and we're back. All of you personal development junkies, I have a special guest today. We met at a couple hypnosis conventions earlier this year. Actually, it was just about a month ago. And we built up a nice friendship, got to spend some time together. My guest today is an NLP practitioner, a hypnosis expert, a coach, and an addiction specialist. So we're going to get into some of that. Welcome to the show today, Will Horton.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Good.
Coming in from sunny Florida, huh?
Yeah. We met in Vegas. I go back to Vegas on Sunday.
Oh, well, we were in Boston first. We got to know each other in Vegas, but seeing you in the gym in the morning, I think when it was just us two and no one else was around.
Yeah. A lot of people, unfortunately, and I'll say it, a lot of people in our world talk about the mind body and then totally blow off the body.
Yes.
They're too busy getting donuts and coffee first thing in the morning.
Yeah, recovering from the drinks the night before, right?
Yeah.
Not us. We were good to go. So let's talk about your background a little bit. You've been practicing NLP, I think, since before I was born or close to it. So what got you started in that and kind of what put you on that path?
All right. Well, actually, the first time I was ever exposed to hypnosis was in high school. I had a book, it was called Hypnosis for Change. It's still in print. And I remember I got it and I read it. They had a little induction and a script, and I read it and it worked, right? Scared the shit out of me. I didn't really do it anymore. I made some self-hypnosis cassette. Actually, first it started reel to reel. I'll tell you how old I am. Okay. Then I made some cassettes. I really didn't follow it up. I played sports in high school, drank a lot of beer, which ties into my story later, and so I wasn't into it. And then fast forward a few years, I had an addiction, primarily alcohol, that took away a couple of careers. Number one was a military career. I got out of high school, was gonna become a pilot, go to West Point, do all kinds of cool stuff. Well, drank that away, as they say. Then I got this hair up my butt one day. I said, I'm gonna be an actor, as I was getting out of the Army. And even though I'd never seen a play in my life, Nick, I'd never seen a play, I decided I want to be an actor, right? Stage actor.
Okay.
So I got accepted into a really good acting school and started doing it and was doing quite well. But again, addiction took that away. And after a few false starts, I finally started to sober up when I came across someone who actually did some hypnosis and what we would know now as NLP. Everything I was doing to try to quit drinking made sense. And then my life started to change. I became an alcohol and drug counselor, studied NLP, because back then it was easy to find an NLP training. It was hard to find a hypnosis training. And then I did go back to school, get my doctorate in clinical psychology because the government paid for it. And so I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, so you trained in NLP first, then hypnosis, and then psychology?
Right.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because then once I started learning clinical psychology, for me, it was like pulling teeth because I'd already found some things that really worked fast, worked effective. And now it was like going backwards to try to do some things.
I'm glad you said that because I always wonder, knowing what I know about NLP and hypnosis and human behavior without having a psychology degree, what are they learning? Because I can go, get someone's phobia gone in 5 minutes. What are they learning when they're getting a PhD in psychology that's better or different?
Well, really, and I see it a little bit in the hypnosis and NLP world. Most people want to take psychology in college for one of two reasons. A, they want to mess with people, right? They want to like mind control, get laid, whatever. So that's why they want to learn it. Or they know or think there's something wrong with them.
Yes.
And they think that by taking this, it'll fix them. Well, then when you get into psychology in college, at the bachelor's level, you don't learn nothing. You learn history, you learn this. So then they say, well, don't worry, in your master's program. So then you start taking a master's program and you really don't learn much, to be honest with you. You learn more theory, more stuff. And then once you get in your doctorate program, whether it's a PhD or a PsyD, then you start learning a few things. But you really don't learn anything until you start your internships, which they basically throw you out there and you do what you do, right? So if you come from and you got to remember, in the psych world, you've got a college degree. In a university, they'll only hire someone to teach in their school that follows their dogma. So if you went to Indiana University, which is a cognitive behavioral school, that's all they're going to hire, people that teach that. Somebody says, well, you should get a job at a college. Nobody would hire me, you know? That's one reason I got one of the first like kind of alternative degrees. I mean, I'm fully licensed in California, got a license here in Florida, because I couldn't find a school that made sense to me. So I found a school with a guy that was running it, liked hypnosis, liked NLP, and his specialty was addictions. So that's what that's why I did what I did.
Sure. And I think for most of us, there's a lot of truth to that we're trying to fix ourselves, right? And that's why we get into psychology, NLP, hypnosis. And, it's really a gift because we learn it for ourselves. And then a lot of us are driven to bring that back to others that have struggled with the same thing. So talk to me about you. What specific NLP techniques did you use, or did somebody use with you to help you overcome drinking?
Well, really what it was is it reframed a lot in my mind, right? And I had that conscious, subconscious conflict, right?
Yes.
They would, Fritz Perls will call it top dog, underdog thinking. See, I do know psychology.
That's what I talked about in my NGH presentation about the conflicts between the conscious and the subconscious. But
yeah, because consciously, drinking was killing me. It took away my military career, an acting career, countless relationships. So consciously, I know I needed to do it, but subconsciously, I was hanging on to it. And at the same time, I was always a health freak, worked out, ate pretty good, except when I'd be on a binge. Then I'd eat, White Castles and brats and shit like that the rest of the time. So there was this dichotomy, if you will, right? A paradox. And so they did a technique. Now I would know and call it the visual squash, which for the first time, it kind of started to click in, right? And then it just made sense.
So what need do you think was being met in the subconscious by drinking? Because I think a lot of people have that love and connection from it, or a stress reliever, or there's some need that's being met, or the subconscious wouldn't do it, right?
Right. Well, I think it's, there was a connection. I didn't connect well with other people. It's not unusual to talk to people with an addiction, especially alcohol or drugs, to talk about they felt like they had a hole in their soul or a hole in their heart. And then the first time, because to this day, I can tell you the first time I really drank, I probably tasted it as a kid,
Sure.
Whatever. But I was in freshman in high school, and after a football game, and I was drinking with the older guys, the juniors and stuff, right? And so they had cherry vodka, and they put it in little like baby food jars. Somebody stole it from their parents, probably, right? And so everybody's sipping it,
baby food jars, okay.
Yeah, like so 4-ounce baby food jars, right? They had a couple of them. And it gets to me. Now, I was the quarterback of the freshman football team and stuff. So my personality's pretty stable. I'm gregarious, I'm outgoing, I'm a kidder, I was a pretty good athlete. So on the outside, you'd think I would fit in, but I never felt like I fit in. And so then they passed me the little jar, and it was probably 3/4 full. So it was about 3 ounces, right? That's 3 shots, right? So I chugged the whole thing down. And I remember to this day, it burned in my throat, hit my stomach, hit right here. And for the first time in my life, Nick, I felt normal.
Wow.
And I feeling, right? And I love the saying, my thing about addictions is this: as long as it's doing something for you, you will put up with what it's doing to you. Right? Yes, it was causing me, I got thrown off the football team, had to work to get back. I got, I got in all kinds of trouble, but I would put up with that because it made me feel good. And it wasn't until it quit doing something for me, it was only doing stuff to me, that then I was ready to quit.
So, for us humans, belonging, connecting, it's survival. That's why we fear rejection so much, because if we're rejected, we're kicked out of the tribe and we're going to die. And so for you to your subconscious had this feeling of belonging when you drank, and it made that emotional connection. And now it's no wonder that ran a program that, even though consciously you didn't want it, it says, well, we have to belong, we have to fit in, let's drink. And I think a lot of people miss that, those addictions, those drives, those urges. are really meeting our needs on a subconscious level.
Well, yeah. And, you know, I got a different model of addictions. Is real quick. It's like most people, right, they're blank. They don't drink or drug when they're a kid, right? There's some outliers, but put that out. Most of us don't, right? Even though your parents may drink, you may be around people that are drinking. And yes, you and I both know you're picking up information.
Yes.
The only time I saw my parents get along and everybody partying was when they were drinking. But then, so you go from abstinent, because you just don't drink, and then you start to experiment with drugs or alcohol. As much as you're young yet, as much as every parent will say, not my kids, bullshit, 95, 99% of the kids are going to experiment with drugs or alcohol, right? Now, for all the people that experiment, a percentage will just say, I don't like the way this makes me feel. I don't like the loss of control. It makes me feel sick. So they go back to being abstinent. They go, I don't like this, right? But so that percentage goes over here. And then most people, though, go from experimentation to social use. They can have a beer, they can not have a beer, and they'll stay that way most of their whole life. There'll be a social use. We see it at the conferences, and that's not saying you don't get drunk every once in a while. It's just not a problem.
And this isn't just alcohol. This is pretty much a lot of, drugs are included. Even food could be included with the same model, right?
Right. But then for some people, so they're social users, then they move into like the clinical term would be substance abuse, right? Or behavior abuse if it's a behavior. And, like you're going through a divorce, or you're sitting around the bar, sitting around the bar drinking and doing stuff like that. You have post-traumatic stress from combat, so you're drinking. A lot of that's self-medication, right? So, but it doesn't just have to be negative. It could be positive. You might relate to this. Some kid goes to college, joins a fraternity, and so for 4 years they stay drunk, right? If it's a party school, I don't know what school you went to, but Indiana University was a party school.
I went to Purdue, so I'm just up the highway from you at Purdue.
Well, Purdue was, I think they're a little bit more serious, but even then you had to party, people would party, right? Now, so they're fitting that criteria of substance abuse. They're getting in trouble. They're on the they're on the dean's watch list, all that shit, right? But they keep doing it. Now, or they're going through the divorce, or Now, most of those people will self-regulate and go back to being able to drink normal. Mm-hmm. This goes against what for 50 years they said about addiction, right? They always used to say, once you're a pickle, you'll never be a cucumber again, right? But a lot of those people, I'll tie it in with a story I love in a moment. So, but then some of those people, about 3 to 7%, they have a genetic quirk that they're addicted. They're not just socially using or abusing it, they're addicted to it. They go into withdrawals when they don't have it, right? And so that's just a genetic quirk, right? It's just like some people are allergic to shellfish, other people aren't. And if you're in that group, the only thing you can do is either drink or stay sober. Mm-hmm. There's you can never socially do it again, right? So first you have to figure out what group you're in, right? And a lot of this ties into the I call it the happy rat study. And the happy rat study is, back in the late 60s, early 70s, they took rats, they hooked them on certain drugs, they duplicated heroin, I think cocaine, a couple other things, alcohol. Anyway, so they got the rats hooked, and then the rat would be in this little cage all strung out, and they would throw in like a female rat. Well, the rat would ignore it, right? They'd throw in food. The rat would just keep getting high till it died. So it started the zero tolerance thing, right? Great. And yet some psychologists actually were thinking and said there's something wrong with this study. Rats, much like human, are social creatures, right? They want a group. They like groups. So what they did, they duplicated the study where they took the rats, got them hooked, right? But then instead of just throwing food in, they took the rat out of the unhappy rat cage and put it in a happy rat cage, right? Where there were food and females and males and kids, and all the rats wouldn't go back and do the drugs or the alcohol, even though it was right there, right? So they're like, this is interesting. This coincided with a little event in America that you've heard about in the History Channel I lived through, which was Vietnam, and where it wasn't a popular war. There was none of this, hey, thank you for your service, So all these kids, most of them, the average combat veteran or guy in Vietnam was 18 to 23, right? So they're over there and they're unpopular. They don't want to be there. They're forced to be there. So they were self-medicating, right? And you're in Southeast Asia. You know, they had great marijuana. They had great hashish grew everywhere, right? The poppy fields were there. So there was heroin. There was, and the military brought in boatloads of booze, right? So all these troops were self-medicating. They fit all the criteria for substance abuse or dependence, right? They were getting in trouble in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force. They didn't care. You're like, what are you going to do? Send me to Vietnam? You know? And so the government was gearing up for this huge problem. What are we going to do with these 500,000 troops that are addicted to alcohol and drugs? And by the way, we've just spent a year training them how to kill people, right? Well, so they geared up for it. And when the troops got back, nothing happened. 7 to 10% needed more help. Most after there was a reinstatement period, if you will, but most went back. They were fine, right? They went out of the unhappy rat cage of Vietnam into that, you know, and you could track a lot of, and so you have a small percentage that had a genetic thing, and the ones that had more trouble were the guys going back into unhappy scenarios, the inner city where there were no jobs. Thank you for your service. By the way, you're unemployed, right? There's no future. So, and we're seeing it now with the opioid epidemic, which is really rampant in areas where, like, the coal mines are shutting down, the steel mills, the auto plants. So, you know, you grew up watching your grandfather and your father worked 30 years in the mill. Guess what? Screw you. That shit's over. Good luck. So that's my, so my thing of addictions is you have a small percentage that are genetically predisposed that they really need help, and the only thing they can do is stay abstinent. But most people will self-regulate and go back to being normal. That's why you see kids go to college, party for 4 years, you know, and then they get out and they go, okay, that was fun, but now I got to get a job, I get a career, maybe get married. And, you know, you might go to a Purdue football game and have a few beers with your, you know, an alumni thing. But the most of the time, it's no problem.
Yeah. So that was definitely me in college. I had a great time. I came out, would still drink occasionally, obviously less than in college. And then over the years, it just faded away. And now I'm on a year without drinking and doing great. I don't know that I'll go back. Definitely never go back to the way I did before. But for those people that are either struggling with addiction or are social users that, or users that maybe overuse and they want to cut back, they just haven't been able to. How do you use NLP and hypnosis to either totally get rid of an addiction or to at least cut back and manage?
Well, the first thing is I explain like that model, you know, so yes. Where are you? You know, we don't know yet. So the first thing you're gonna have to do is get clean and sober till you figure out where the hell you are, right? And so somebody's sober for a few months and then they have a few drinks and they go off to the races. Well, guess what? That means you're probably genetically predisposed, right? Yeah. That's why you see all these people go into AA, they sober up for like 90 days, 6 months, then they relapse. And a lot of those go back and go, okay, I can't, you were right, I can't do this, right? Now, some people can. They go, oh, movement of the foot with the, where are you now?
Oh, you cut out. What'd you say?
Oh, how old are you?
33.
33. Well, there's a movement afoot in your generation of people not drinking. You know, it's like they're experimenting with sobriety, right? And it could be a blowback from all the stuff going on. It could be all this other stuff. And so but what we have to figure out is, you know, what need, if you will, like you said, does alcohol fit? You know, and are you a full-blown addict or do you just need to self-regulate? And then a lot of people that self-regulate, even if they drink, maybe like you, they decide, I don't want to do this. I don't like the way it made me feel. I don't want to be stupid, you know, and so we're seeing it in the numbers, right? Yep. And so it's kind of interesting. But then the other thing one of the things I have to coach people in, if they decide to go abstinent for whatever reason, you're weird to the rest of the world.
Right.
Remember we were on that bowling thing and everybody kept looking at us?
Yeah.
You know, I had my bottle of water. I think you had a bottle of water. We had a great time. You know, you and I made the strikes. We got the team drunk.
We did.
Right?
We did. They had to take, for the listeners, they had to take shots every time a strike was bowled. And so you and I were throwing strikes in water, and they were ripping shots of Jaeger or whatever they had.
So, yeah, fireball. They were doing whatever that is. Yeah. But yeah, so if you don't drink, especially in our culture, you have to justify why. People will ask you, why don't you drink? It's really none of your business.
Right.
You know, nobody will ask you if you're somewhere and say, no, I don't eat pork. They're going to assume it's probably for a religious reason, and they're not. But you and I go, I'm not drinking. You sure? They have wine, they have beer, they have this. No, I mean, and it's funny, you know, a lot of these people, these conferences know me for 30 years. They still go, are you sure you don't want just one?
Yeah. So it's funny because when I was like, you know, I'd been cutting back for years and people would kind of pressure me. And I found that when my frame wasn't strong, I would often give in. And so that was kind of this year was like, no, like I'm going to have a strong frame. I'm only going to do what I want to do. Nobody's going to pressure me. And as soon as I made that decision, now when people are like, oh, hey, do you want to drink? I'm like, oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. Nobody, like, people may ask why, but there's no pressure because I have that like strong internal frame. I'm not tempted. I'm doing what's right for me. And nobody really gives me grief about it. Like I expected they would.
Well, and usually as you get older, people drink less anyway.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't handle it. You know, you're in your 30s, but trust me, in a few years, something happens and you stay up. Some of us are saying this at the conference, you know, at 1 a.m, like, I'm going to fill this tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, you know, and what the other thing I try to coach people up is a lot of times you have to get to the point where that you begin to realize, and this would work for alcohol or drugs or even certain foods. There's nothing in my life a drink will make better. Mm-hmm. There's no real pain it will take away. And here's a big one people don't want to look at. There's no behavior I do that I need a drink to justify. You know, that's a big one because then you can get into sexual issues and other issues and this and that. Could be something as minor as I can't dance unless I've had a few drinks, right? But once you cross that barrier that it doesn't make a meal better. You know, the only time somebody say, oh, you got to have some wine with this, it makes the steak better. I go, well, if I need wine to make the steak better, and it was a chef that said it, I said, then it's a shitty piece of meat. Yeah. You know, and he just got like, I go, it doesn't make anything better. It may deaden pain. I will admit that alcohol's a pain, you know, it deadens pain, but it doesn't take it away. Right. You know, if I'm unemployed and my bills are overdue, getting drunk today ain't going to fix that. Right. And again, there's no behavior I do that I need to drink to justify.
So that's a good perspective shift because I think a lot of people think that they're more social, more relaxed in bed and all these things. And what that may do is cover up those deeper issues. And without alcohol, you just go and, you know, you and I use the tactics. We just go in and get the root issue out and then we don't need alcohol. So I want to talk about a few like NLP techniques, patterns, reframes that you use. And I'm guessing a lot of it's around shifting the way we relate to pain and pleasure around those activities. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah. And well, and two things. I always do like a visual squash, the idea of the part of you that wants to change, the part of you that fights it, because they don't communicate. That's why you go back and forth. So the visual squash technique kind of aligns those two quite well. And then a lot of times, and you see it when people will talk, how they have to shift their submodalities, right? I was running a group and a guy was talking about it. He relapsed, right? And he went, yeah, it was a hot day and all I saw was this good big cold beer, you know, an ice cold, and his hands went like this. Yeah. And he goes, you know, I had foam on the top, an ice mug, and it's running down the side. I was getting thirsty as he was describing it, right? Because as we would say, that's his submodalities. And if he did this with his hands, and he goes, all I could think about was that drink. And I'm standing there going, of course, because you made it this big.
So some people are only listening, but Will, with your hands, you're making it big and right in front of you, right? This glass of beer that's 2.5 feet tall and, yeah. You know, and right in front of you. When the modality of the visual shows up like that, it's hard to resist.
Right. And so we're, you know, we had him shrink it down to real size.
Mm-hmm.
How big is a mug of beer? And then of course I threw in, and you know, now that I have horses, I can tell you that beer looks exactly like horse piss. Ever had to capture a horse? The glorious thing of having horses, you got to catch a urine sample, right, in a cup.
Yeah.
Right? So the horse is pissing, you catch it, and it looks like beer. It's yellow, it's got foam on the top. So I said, now when you think about that beer, make it this big and think about it's like cow piss. It's like horse piss, you know? Would that be good? I don't think so.
Yeah, so that changes the relation to it for sure. And then you mentioned something that keeps coming up, and I think it's such an essential part of any therapy. I use it from everyone from athletes to salespeople, and that's the parts therapy, parts negotiation, right? And so for you to isolate the part of them that manages that drinking habit, talk to that part of them, get it communicating with the other parts. That's definitely a big part of your work, I'm guessing.
Right, and then you got to work around like all the connection issues.
Sure.
You know, and the people that don't like the 12-step program, I think it's out of ignorance is the only way to describe it, because it's a place to learn how to connect with other people that don't drink.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If your family drinks and all your friends drink and now you're going to quit drinking, you got nobody to connect to that can relate. So you go to these meetings. And also too, drinking or drugging or whatever may be a big part of your life. You know, you're the guy that knows all the, I just worked with a guy he knew all the doormen at all the clubs in New York. That's pretty slick.
Yeah.
If he goes, yeah, you know, so guys, hey, they call him up, get him in the club, buy him a couple drinks just to jump the line at the hot clubs, right? And he knew where all the after hours were, and he could get in there. That's part of his status, of his significance. Well, now he's given all that shit up, right? So now what? So you're giving up your connection, all your drinking buddies, all your drugging buddies, gambling buddies, and now you got no connection, and maybe that was your significance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And this is where I get mad at hypnotists and NLPers and therapists. I say, how dare you want to take away someone else's significance? I got friends, they're retired now in Florida. They love going to the meetings. They counsel, we call it counsel. They sponsor people. I go, it's pretty arrogant of you guys to take that away from them. What are they supposed to do? Stay home and watch television? So you get your connection, you get your significance. And you and I find significance in not drinking now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you different. It's different. Nope, don't need it, don't want it.
And you become like the people you spend time with, right? It's so hard. Like I'm such a healthy guy. I don't drink. But when I go hang out with certain groups of people, my diet lapses a little bit. My workouts lapse a little bit. And so it's nice to gravitate and meet people like you, Will, at events, because
we were drinking wheatgrass. Both of us.
Yeah, we were drinking our powdered greens. But I've noticed that I've inspired several people to give up drinking. And just because I have a strong frame, I'm doing me, I'm connecting, I'm significant in other ways. And people are like, if Nick can do this without drinking, look at the way he's being, the way he's having fun and socializing without it, running a room, why do I need drinking? And then that little shift, it's fun to be able to give people.
Yeah, it builds that inner core, like you say. Once you make a decision like that, whether, a lot of us make fun of vegans, but I respect them if they really go vegan or vegetarian.
Yeah.
Right? Because it takes that inner core that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah. I'm losing you a little bit. All right. So there you are. So I have one question. So I know the 12-step process has worked very well for a lot of people. But one thing about it that I question is the I am. They start the meetings with I am an alcoholic, right? And so we know that the words that follow I am follow you, and so that often creates an identity. So I'm always curious about, and I know it's to relate to the people and to make it seem like you're similar to them to build rapport. But is that of value?
Well, there's two things, right? Great. It's a great question because I love saying this. Number one, you're making a judgment how other people judge themselves, you know, but there's that. So just be honest. But it depends what it means to that person. I still say after way over 35 years, I'm an alcoholic. I'll say it at a meeting, I'll say it anywhere, because all that means to me is I cannot drink successfully.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Okay.
I can drink, trust me. I know how to drink. I got drunk in places people were surprised I got drunk, right? But I know how, but I can't do it successfully. That's all that word means to me. There's no judgment, right? And also then some people say, yeah, but this shit in the meeting where it says, I am powerless. But actually, and Scott Sandlin points this out, my friend Scott, it's past tense. If you read the step, it said, we admitted we were powerless. It does not say we are powerless. There's a difference, those of us that study language, between are and were. And then the way it was explained, if you really get into it, not everybody knows this because the founders are all dead and they quit talking about it. If you start drinking and you have an alcohol problem, you're powerless. Good luck stopping while the train has left the station, right? But if you're sober, even a few days, at that moment, you were powerless when you drank. I'm not powerless right now.
Right.
If I drink again, so it's a different kind of flip that, you know, that when people go, I never thought of that, right? And a lot of those steps are written past tense.
Sure.
We admitted we made a decision. It doesn't say, so you walked into an AA meeting, brother. You've already crossed the threshold. You've admitted you need help. You know, but it's a cool flip.
Okay. So you said the word judgment, and I love that word because I love thinking and talking about the idea of judgment. Yesterday, you know, Zach Pinson's, he's staying with me, and we got into a discussion about.
Oh, tell him I said hi.
I will. We got into a discussion about judgment, and it came to me that when we judge ourselves for an action, so let's say, you know, I had too much to drink, too much to eat, and I'm trying to lose weight or quit using drugs or alcohol. When we judge ourselves, I think we lose rapport with ourselves, and then we lose the ability to influence ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
And I think the more we judge, the more of that conflicting energy we create, and we separate those parts of us. And so it's almost like watching that behavior without judgment and then making a new decision.
Well, yeah. And, you know, I read a thing a guy wrote about, you know, EFT.
Yeah.
The word tap, tap, tap.
Sure.
This guy says to him, he thinks the magic of ENT is EFT. I learned it as TFT, thought field therapy. I learned it from Dr. Callahan.
Okay.
So I've been around this shit forever. But is when you tap like, and you go, I totally and completely accept myself, even though I drink too much. That is what you just said. You're taking the judgment away because I totally and completely accept myself, even though it's doing a visual squash inside your head. Because you're accepting, I do this, I don't want to, right? Because like you say, if all you do, because we beat ourselves up, and you really see that with weight loss. One of the things I like, you know, is I took what I learned from addictions into weight loss, and then I've turned what I've learned into weight loss back into addictions.
Yes.
Right? Because, you know, some people say, you know, that like overeating is an addiction. Well, technically, I'm not quite sure it can fit the addiction model, because you can live the rest of your life, never drink, never smoke, never do drugs. If you needed to, never have sex, never gamble. You could do all that. You got to eat to stay alive.
Right.
So you got to open that box a couple times a day. So this is behavior you got to learn how to moderate, right? And so, if you want to look at anything that's addictive in the food process, it's the eating that's addictive. When you eat, where you eat, and why you eat. The food is irrelevant. And that's what people forget about the 12-step program, especially Alcoholics Anonymous. It says in there, drinking is but a symptom.
Yes.
You know, and in Narcotics Anonymous, the drugs are just a symptom, right? And so, you know, when I look at people trying to change their diet, and all they do is look at the food. Oh, I need a low carb. I need keto. I need Mediterranean. I don't know. They'll go, you know, A to Z, Atkins to the zone. To me, that's like an addict or an alcoholic going, I'll quit drinking Jack. I'll only drink beer. Right. No. you're on the back of the Titanic. The boat is going down.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's what people don't really think about, especially when it comes to the food side of this. Food is a symptom, you know? That's why I created a new program, Ultimate Fat Loss for You. And the reason I did that is there's so many fat hypnotists and nutritionists. Yep. No, I was at a conference. I started saying that. And I was saying, I go, God, there's a lot of fat people here, you know, for people that have the answers.
Yeah, right.
And I was thinking, because it was at the Guild a few years ago, I started doing it and pissing people off. I thought it was funny. But I'd just been at a conference with nutritionists. And there was a bunch of fat nutritionists and nurses. And I'm like, Jesus, if they have the answers and they're fat, then I go to a hypnosis conference and they're fat, right? So it's like a lot of psychologists. I'm like, so obviously we don't know what we're doing.
Right. And you know, I think, you know, for me and looking at you as well, that's definitely one area that we're congruent in is like, hey, we got the health piece together. And I think a big part of that is managing the addictions, quote unquote, of food, alcohol. And, you know, obviously you and I don't have the alcohol and we manage the food well. But we're congruent and that shows up in our practice. So for people that are coaches, that are, you know, hypnotists, it's important because that's the first thing people see is your body type, right?
Oh yeah. And, you know, we could argue whether it's right or wrong, but yeah, we judge people by how they look at first glance. And if they're over 20% over their ideal weight, they're judged as lazy, slothful, non-trustworthy at a subconscious level. You know, I was giving a talk at a Rotary, and it was all like these salespeople, like bankers and insurance guys. And I said that. I said, well, I look around this room, there's a lot of fat people. And I say that just like that. I go, if you lost weight, you would sell 20 to 30% more. You know, and they're just, it was funny. Somebody said, you actually did that? And I said, yeah, I upset a lot of the people in the room, but I got like 10 clients out of it. Because they knew this in the back of their mind.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I'm just telling you, you know.
I love that. Well, you know, it's a little pattern interrupt, and they're like, yeah, you know, I've known it, but you brought it to the forefront.
Well, just like the other thing I always tell people when I'm training new hypnotists or NLPers, if you're going to work with weight loss, call it what it is, fat. Don't say you have a weight issue. So how long have you been fat?
Yeah.
You know, what drives you getting fat? Because people, oh, that'll upset people. No.
Good.
No. And if they're overweight, that's how they're talking to themselves in their head.
Yeah.
They're not thinking, I might have a slight weight issue.
I'm big boned, Will.
Yeah, I'm big boned.
So, all right. So we'll start wrapping up here, but I want to go over one other thing.
Sure.
That's stress and our emotional states with addictions, because I have a model that when we're in stress or fear-based emotions, we're running mostly the programs in our limbic system. And when we can be in a relaxed state, you know, love, gratitude, joy, then we're able to use our conscious mind to direct our subconscious mind. But a lot of things, especially with food, right? And I think probably all addictions, when we get into that stressed out state, our willpower is gone.
Right. Yeah. Because when you're, you know, there's 4 states that actually change your physiology. When you're hungry, right? When you're hungry, your blood sugar drops, messes up your dopamine. You got to eat. That's why everybody's diet's good until they're hungry. Then they eat this. That's why, you know, what's that commercial? The Hangries or whatever with the Snickers bar, right? Because when you're hungry, changes your blood sugar, all this stuff in your body. Also, you know, or fear. So you're hungry, angry, lonely, you're depressed or lonely. It's the opposite. You have too much serotonin, not enough dopamine, and you do some things. Or when you're tired. And so in the 12-step world, they always called it HALT. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Because when you're in that mode, you're much more likely to relapse. And now we know, as like Joe Dispenza would say, when you're in the hormones of stress, you shut off your prefrontal cortex. You do not make good decisions. And when you're in that state, you're trying to make, if you try to figure this out, you're trying to make a decision about a program with a faulty program running. You know, you've got to get a new program. And yeah, so the hormones of stress, you physically have no willpower. Right? You physically have no willpower. And then for some things, some addictions or some behaviors, then once you add alcohol, drugs, or even certain foods, then it flips again, and now it's even harder to stop.
Yeah.
So, it's this whole thing about pulling back and making the changes, because what NLP does, of course, is pulls you out of it, changes the process. And when you go back into it, you're thinking about it differently.
Yes.
But the hormones of stress, yes. Because I remember one time Tom Nicoli and I talked, because he did thousands of weight loss clients too. He goes, yeah, he kind of did it too. He would do first 3 sessions just on stress, never mention food, never mention exercise, and people would drop weight. Because also when you're under stress, as you well know, your cortisol jacks up, yep. And that just sucks weight in.
Well, and it puts your body into a state of acidosis, right? And when you have acid in the body, you push that away into your fat cells, and you end up storing fat versus being more of a relaxed, alkaline, oxygenated state where fat just kind of melts off from that state. So good stuff. All right, Will, what are you working on right now? What are you passionate about? I guess what's going on in your world?
Well, I still do a lot of addiction work. I created an online addiction treatment program. I call it AA Solved. It stands for Alcohol and Addiction Solved. So it's just aasolved.com. And it's an online addiction program, because that's the wave of the future. Nobody wants to go away to treatment.
Yeah.
And also in certain jobs, you can't go away. Okay. And I'm tying that back into, I restarted back up my ultimate fat loss program, because I'm taking what I learned in addictions, tying it to this. And so with that, I got a couple books coming out, a new book on addictions, a new book on fat loss. The first book coming up is Habits for Success, neuro-restructuring techniques for success. And so that's kind of what I'm excited about and what I'm doing.
Awesome. So where can people find you? You gave your website already. Is there anywhere else? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube?
Yeah, just Google me. I'm everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Will, it's been a pleasure having you on. Any last thoughts you want to leave our audience with?
Just that, between stimulus and response, there's a gap. And in that gap is our ability to choose. That's what we help people do, is make better choices at the subconscious level. Because once you train your subconscious the right way, it becomes much different, right? I'm getting back into karate after a long layoff. And it's like, it's taken a while for the movements to start coming back. But then last night I was working with these little kids, and there's karma, because I don't like kids. But and they're doing this movement. I go, no, it's this way. And I forgot I knew how to do the movement the correct way, how to do this movement. I'm like, oh, it's in there.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's coming back out. So if we do that with things like, whether it's, things like exercise and diet and drinking and that, and lately I've been working with all these ex-athletes that have gained all this weight. That is so cool to work with them, because they're screwed up in another way. Right. And so yeah.
Well, and I was a wrestler, and a lot of wrestlers have eating disorders coming out of wrestling. We don't call it that, but a lot of them get put on a lot of weight once they don't have to cut anymore. So I see that.
And a lot of the more elite athletes, once they quit competing in the sport, they quit exercising.
Yeah.
And then the mistake they make, I'm going to get back in shape. So they start doing a sport. So, like in your 30s or 40s, you start playing softball, or down here, but he goes, I play golf. I go, if you're riding in a golf cart, brother, that is not exercise. Just swing a stick 140 times. You're not doing, but they didn't fall in love with exercise just for exercise. I always think of like Howie Long, or what's his name, Shannon Sharp, and they look like they could still play.
They look like
but what they always say is, I always like the exercise with or without the game.
Yeah.
But a lot of us, like how many of your wrestler friends, once they quit wrestling, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, I'm never lifting weights, not working out. They're still eating 4,000 calories a day.
Right. So that's what we're here for, though, Will. So anyway, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure I will see you at some event in the near future, and or on the Facebook world. So
keep in touch.
Yep, great chatting. Talk to you soon.
Bye.